Go into the word of the Lord this morning, and we are going to read what thus saith the Lord for today. And we know that we have been talking about this fire, Interesting. Talking about this fire. And we understand that even 4 weeks straight we've been talking about the fire pertaining to what God is doing and why. And one of the things we have to understand is we understand that it's for the purpose of purifying and doing what we need to do. Because whenever God has ordained fire on our tails, it's for a divine reason. And the divine reason, we understand multiple reasons, but for different people for different reasons. Okay? And everybody have to decipher and see where their life fit and why they understand this fire being a part of their life. So that we can get out of this place of the questioning. It's time for us to get out of the questioning place. See, because I got into the message yet, we have to get out of this questioning place. Because what I mean is, it does not mean we do not question. Because any man that asks, he'll give liberally anyone that asks. And we understand that, and that's well. But what we have to also understand is, when we come to a greater place of maturity, we begin to understand why things are happening. When things happen in our life, our spirit begins to quicken and understand why it's happening. And what God's trying to get us to is a place where we begin to understand that better. Some things may even perplex us for a moment, because we're human, and it may perplex us and say, "I just can't figure this out. Why this is going on?" And sometimes we get perplexed for a moment, and God understands that. And so perplexity is not wrong in itself. It's still telling God, I want to understand more of you and your will in my life. So in that, there's nothing wrong with that. But God wants to take us out of so much of that perplexity. So now, what God's trying to bring us to is understanding that when you understand what I'm doing, when things occur, you won't be caught so much off guard. Because your spirit will be at a place where it will be basically almost ready, in a sense. Because what you're saying is, and what God is saying is, you're learning my spirit and my flow with your life. And when you begin to learn His spirit and His flow with your life, then it becomes this thing where there's certain things, when you begin to see them happen, you understand why they're happening. You're not down crying anymore like it used to be. We all can have tears for a moment, we all can have a little moment. But we get to a place where we begin to understand why these things are happening. And we're not shocked like we used to be. We used to be shocked in disarray. But now we get to this place where we begin to understand why these things are happening. We're understanding. And what do we say the fire is? The fire is to give us what? Eyesight, which is insight. Spiritual eyesight, insight, to see and understand. Because we should be able to look at something in our life or around us and understand why. So we understand that we see from our spirit man. Because that's the part of where our spiritual eyesight comes from, which is from our inside, our spirit man. Insight. Now watch this. So if that is the case, God is saying, at this point, we should be getting to a point now where we understand it's near graduation. Watch this. One of the things after you complete 4 years of school, whether it's high school or whether you're going for your basic bachelor's, after this 4 years period of time, it's graduation. I don't care if you're going for an associate's or bachelor's. You understand? Then when you get past the bachelor's, it depends on, most of the time you can get it in 3.5. On the general sense, most of the time you will max out at 4. Then when you start getting to the master's program, then you can kind of cut it down from going to 6. You can get it like in 5.5. Okay? And you're getting half, which means equals 4.5, maybe 5.5 years for that whole period of time. Then you start going all the way up to the doctorate and the PhD, and then you get, it depends on, then you do your dissertation and all these kind of things. Watch this. Well, what God began to do about it, He said, now, it's just like with all those particular areas of schooling, you have to have a certain amount of credit hours to graduate. To graduate. Now that's college. But we're going to deal with it both high school and college. We're going to deal with it from that perspective. When we look at it from that perspective, in high school you must have a certain amount of credit hours. In college you must have a certain amount of credit hours. Watch this. But now, I'm going to deal with this scenario based on the message from the standpoint of what we call high school. And we're going to relate it to the fire. When you graduate, what do you get when you graduate from high school? It's called a diploma, right? Because that means you met all the courses, you passed all the courses, and then you did something. There's something you have to do when you're in high school. You have to pass the exit exam. Watch this. But God began to do me. He said, but there's also a scenario that happens if you don't pass the exit exam. It is what you call a certificate of completion. It's called a certificate of completion. That means in some states they would allow you to march, but you would not get a diploma. So technically you're not actually graduating with a diploma. You're actually graduating with a certificate of completion. Meaning you didn't pass the exit exam to actually classify yourself to get a diploma. So when you go into the work field or you go into what we call trying to get into a college, they're not going to accept a certificate of completion. Even though when you walk across the streets, all your family and friends, if they didn't know, will look and say, okay, they graduated, they got a diploma. And really, they didn't graduate with a diploma. They graduated with a certificate of completion. And what God is saying is many of His people are graduating with certificates of completion, but not with diplomas in the Spirit. He said, what does that have to do with the fire? He said, let me tell you something. This is the message title. And the message title goes like this. Will the fire cause you to get enough credit hours for graduation? Will the fire cause you to get enough credit hours for graduation into your new season? Now this is the question. Secondary question is this. Will you have a diploma or certificate of completion in the Spirit? Which one? And the diploma, we understand, is you have to pass the courses and take the exit exam. Certificate of completion is where you pass the courses. It's amazing when I did the study on this. You passed the courses, but you didn't meet the requirement of passing the exit exam. Do you understand that the exit exam, watch this, the exit exam is not something you study for. It's not designed for you to study for. The exit exam is designed for you to just already have known some things based on the 4 years, that when they give it to you, they expect you to know it. They don't expect you to study for it. You can't study for the exit exam. They just give it to you. It's just general information from all the years. And so when they give it to you, they expect you just to know it. So you can't study for the exit exam. There's a way to study for it. Watch this now. So when that knowledge, if that knowledge is known, then that means it is expected that you should be able to get the exam, take the exam, and be able to pass. Because if you pass the courses, you actually got the knowledge, you should be able to pass. Well, you say, well, what does this have to do with the fire? See, we're now nearing graduation. It's now time for us to go get our caps and gowns now. We've been in the fire long enough. And it's time for you to march across the stage now. It's now time for everyone to see that you're getting ready to march now. It's now time for everybody to see that you got your cap and your gown. So that, being that that's the case, God's saying, but when you walk across and everybody begin to see, what will you have? You say, well, what does completion have to do with anything? Completion is this. Graduation is this, and completion is this. See, all of us will go through trials. But the completion is you went through the trial. And you went through the trial. Watch this. And you went through the trial. And you went through the trial. And I went through the trial. Watch this now. All of us went through the trial. But you have to remember something. All of us went through the trial, but only few of us passed the test in the trial. So what happens is, they will be able to say about me that I did go through, which is what we call the trial, which symbolizes school. So now, being that that's the case, I really legitimately went through the trial. The completion is that when I stand up to testify, I will be saying that I went through the trial. But I didn't pass the test. There's a difference. See, in other words, what is happening with a lot of these people, we're in the fire, but we're kicking against the fire and not passing the test of the fire. Passing the test of the fire means you graduate with the setting of saying that you actually gain what God wanted you to gain. So when He gives you the test of saying, you can exit out of this right, because the final test is this. That test is you're supposed to have learned some things in this fire. Now I'm going to ask you to do some things and speak some things. And because you learned, you will speak it the way I say speak it, you will do the way I say do it, because in this point, now you're at a place where your spirit and your heart is ready to be obedient. That symbolizer of the test is the fact that you're now ready to receive the fullness of God based on Him now saying, I want you to obey me. So you got to go through the fire to get to the place to get up. I had to go through the fire to a place to get up. Because a lot of times we're not moving because the fire has us frustrated. We're frustrated. And when the fire has us frustrated, what it does, it can cause us to shut down. It can cause us to shut down. So what God's saying is this here. When this is over, did you complete the test right? Or did you kick against the test or the trial? Passing it is this. When it's time for everybody to march across the stage. And that marching is a symbolism of all of His people who went through. But I'm going to tell you something. Everybody will not have the same testimony. And the reason why everybody will not have the same testimony is because many kicked in the fire but were still in the fire. See, you could have laid down and just let the fire burn you. I could have been kicking and running. You talked about it earlier about not trying to, about the fish. Trying to run from God and looking back and all that. See? God's saying, in this fire, we're supposed to no longer look back. In this fire, we're supposed to no longer kick. In this fight, we're supposed to now surrender. We're supposed to surrender. And when we surrender, what we got to understand is this here. This surrendering is to get us to a place where we now can come to a place of graduation. But when you graduate, what are you graduating with? A diploma or a certificate of completion? Which one is it? So when you testify, and I testify, we completed this trial. Yeah, we did. But we didn't actually go through it right. So when you testify and I testify, people say we did. And people say, oh, that nigga he went through. Oh, yeah, I know he went through because I saw it. I saw what he went through. But they didn't know and understand that he was still kicking. They didn't understand that I was still kicking. So we would deceive people because we think that because people see that we went through, that it's well with God. No, people see that, but God said, but they don't see that the whole time they were kicking in this trial and not allowing me to burn them up in this trial. So they were kicking even though they were in the trial. So yes, you can testify and say, I went through this trial. And many who don't understand say, yeah, he went through the trial. I know he went through. But God said, you know what? But he didn't go through right. Because the whole time he was kicking. The whole time she was kicking. So what God is saying is, when you graduate, and when this is over, when this is over, and when it's graduation time, that's going to be when he's going to, watch the graduation is when he's going to just move the fire. Watch this now. Because he's a God that's not going to allow us to suffer forever. You get it? He's just not merciful. But remember what you always heard me teach. Whenever God is doing this, and when it's over, when we come to the new season that we're going to walk into, remember there's going to be distinction. Remember what we said distinction is? Distinction is you will know who those who actually came forth right and to a place of maturity, and those that did not, but still will be blessed. Because at the end of this year, God will still bless us. You know why? Because he's merciful to all of us as his people. So for that reason, what he's going to do is, there's going to be a distinction in graduation. Everybody went across the stage, but what everybody in the stands did not understand is, everything that you see that was given, it was not diplomas. Some were actually certificate of completions. But everybody in the stand don't know that. See, this is what God's saying is, everybody's going to come forth and you will see, well, I'm going to allow my people to stop the suffering. They have suffered long enough and been in the fire. But remember, I'm going to make distinctions too. Everybody's going to be blessed. And everybody will get the house and the car and the money and the new husband and the new wife and operate and all this. But at the same time, there will be a distinction where you're going to know who really went through all the way right and you're going to know who didn't. You're going to know it and you're going to see it in the spirit. And it will be a distinction. You're going to understand the distinction between the two. Why? Why is God saying this? There's a reason. Because what he's saying to us is this. This thing is not over. This thing is about over. But what else did he say? Remember this last week, and I've been saying it for the last couple of weeks. When you get to the place of peace in the fire, what? It's almost over. If you're still chaotic and in chaos, then guess what? It's a change to what? Going back in. Because this is the place now where you should be at peace. You should be at peace now with whatever's going on. If you don't have any peace right now, then it's a chance you may have to go back in. Because it's now time for graduation. We're getting to the place of graduation now. And graduation is, we should see, peace is going to show that we get ready to graduate. Because if you're at peace, you're getting ready to graduate. But if you're not at peace, there's a good chance you're going to get what? Left back, or what's the term they use? Detained. You'll get detained. See, in detained means you have to go back in the fire. That doesn't mean it has to be a long period of time. It may be a short period of time to go back. See? It's no different than when we use something, when we cook something in a microwave. It's not done. We check it, oh, it's not done. What we do, we might put it back in for 30 seconds and it may finish, or 45 seconds and it may finish. And see, for God it may be just for a couple more weeks. I was getting ready to deliver you out today, but I'm going to give you about 3 more weeks of hell. And then and tell you, now you're done. Ding. See? So, if that's the case, now we're looking at the fact that God really is ready to take us towards graduation now. It's time for us to head towards graduation now. No longer looking back, no longer regretting, no longer pondering what could have, would have, should have. That's over with. That's forgiven and done. And God said, now is the time for you to understand. If you went through it right, even if you kicked, just repent and keep moving. And say, God, I ask you to forgive me that I didn't embrace this fire right, and that I did kick. But I'm asking you, God, to show me and teach me that I would be in a way where I would receive what you're doing and why you're allowing it in my life, so that I can get the full benefit of what you're doing and why. Sometimes we don't come out with the wisdom because we don't go through the trial and the fullness of how we need to go through it. When we do, we come out with the wisdom. See, every man or woman of God that go through and allow God to give them the fullness of why He's allowing it, they come out with greater wisdom. Wisdom is not something you just get from the Bible. Wisdom comes through experiences with God. That's where wisdom comes from, besides the Word. Because you can be full of head knowledge of the Word, but have no experiences with everything God was trying to do in your life, you kicked against it. So what God is saying is, I'm trying to give my people my divine wisdom through experiences with me. So if that is the case, God's saying it's now time for graduation. But how will you graduate? See, being at this fire is almost over. Remember, the fire being almost over may be a couple of weeks, maybe a day for somebody, maybe a month for somebody, maybe 2 months for somebody. But the idea is graduation is around the corner. Because it's now time for graduation. So that each one of us have to ask ourselves the question, am I at a place of peace right now? With everything that's been going on in your life, all the hell that's been going on, ask yourself the question, am I at a place of peace in my life now?